we're generally talking about this whatever woke thing that's happening, right? And so you got to think of woke kind of like a church, right? Like I grew up Catholic, so it's like you got cultural Catholics, like they kind of go to church and maybe they go to confession sometimes, and they don't really, they do it, but they don't really do it. And then you have like the hardcores. Like I had a friend in high school that like took notes at church.
Oh, wow.
Right. I'm like,
serial killer.
Yeah. It's like, you do what? You take notes. And then, you've got the pastor, and he obviously studies it, or the priest in a Catholic context, and they study it. And then you've got the theologians that really study it. And so the stuff I'm talking about is like theology level. Like that's like the scholars. And then your average person just wants to feel like a good person.
So you've got like the woke academics, like the woke people that are teaching it to kids.
Yeah.
That really teach it as like critical theory, like critical race theory.
That's right. Yeah.
So those are the ones that are probably aware of all the nonsense.
They're making the nonsense, actually. Yeah. I think they pick some of it up from culture, from activist groups or whatever, but then they refine it and turn it into something. And it, it has this really weird feeling to it. Like you get the impression that it's like they're wrestling with their inner demons and then they're like writing it down.
Yes.
It's like this book now, White Fragility, right? Robin DiAngelo's book, White Fragility.
That's the one that Matt Taibbi destroyed.
Yeah.
Yeah, thank God for Matt Taibbi.
Yeah, it was so
thank
good.
the baby Jesus and Odin.
That's right. It's so good, though, because he's right. He's actually right about it. So if you read the book, there's all these weird vignettes that she tells, these stories. She's like, oh, I went to this potluck for work, and I'm walking around. I walk up, and then I see there's two parties, and we're at the park, and there's two groups of people. One of them's all black, and one of them's not. And I had this moment of panic that I might have to be in the all-black group. And it's like, lady, what's going on? And then it's like all white people are racist is like her conclusion from this. And it's like, maybe it's you.
So she had this panic that she was going to have to party at the park with black people.
Yeah.
And she was worried that she was racist because of that, and therefore all white people are racist?
See, that's what I'm thinking is going on, right? So I'm thinking, I've thought this for a number of years, is that a lot of this stuff where you get these like woke activists doing their blogs or these scholars writing this stuff down, is that they're looking at their own lives. So you have these people that are like, they're walking down the street, maybe whatever. They walk into the hotel, they walk to the restaurant, and they're like, I saw a black guy. And then it's like, I'm not supposed to notice that. And then they start having like this thing in their head, and then they go write an angry blog about how terrible racism is because they're wrestling with it themselves. It's like Sigmund Freud, right? He had that whole idea that everybody wants to have sex with their mothers, and like your psychology is all how you resolve that problem. And it's like, maybe you just wanted to have sex with your mother, Sigmund Freud, and then now it's everybody's a racist is kind of the vibe of the new thing. And there's like this weird religious kind of thing happening around it.
That's really the thing that gets me, is how similar this is to religious or religion, not just religious ideology, like how rigid it is, but also indoctrination, like religious cults, how they indoctrinate people. And one of my friends, Kurt Metzger, really funny guy, who was a Jehovah's Witness when he was younger. And so he's really, really, really sensitive to this stuff. He's like, I know where this is going. Like, this is the same thing that I got when I was in the Jehovah's Witness. This is cult shit.
Yeah.
It's these rigid ideologies that cannot be challenged. You can't in any way veer from the course.
That's right. And they set you up, right? So every single one of these things sets you up. So, for example, one of my favorite examples of these kind of like setups, right? Historically, in the book, I talk about historically, the black feminists came along and they're like, oh, feminism's too white. Feminism isn't paying attention to black feminist issues or black women's issues. And so then these feminists were like, oh, we have to fix that, and they start writing about black issues to the best of their ability. And then 3 years later, the lady writes a paper saying, oh, you're just sticking black things in and it's fake and you're tokenizing it and you're fetishizing it. And it's like, so you can't do it right. And so that is cult, the indoctrination stuff. So it's like you and I could be, talking about something like this, and you could say something. And I'm like, don't you think it's a little bit racist? And then the next step is like, what are you going to say? You're going to say yes or no. If you say yes, now you've owned it, right? So now you're like racist. And so I'm like, well, do you interrogate your racism? Like, do you spend time working on that? And so you see, so you're dragging people into it.
Yeah.
And if you say no, I can say, well, one of the symptoms of participation in systemic racism is an inability to see it if you're white, and it's invisible to you. And so maybe you need to look harder. And it seems like you're getting a little defensive.
Ooh,
you know,
and
and
you start panicking.
And then you start panicking. And when you start to panic, when you start to stress out, they're like, and literally, this lady emailed me the other day, this Indian woman. I get an insane number of emails about people.
From India?
No, from Canada.
Oh.
But an insane number of emails from people who are in different levels of stress with different things that are happening in their lives around this woke explosion that's happened, in the last month or so. So this lady's like, I had to go through a brown fragility training at work.
What?
Yeah, brown fragility is a thing.
So it's
now,
not
too.
even black? Now they're working their way down to brown people?
Yeah, brown people have fragility, white
those
people have
poor
fragility.
people. So people who racially were sort of like Switzerland, like Indians, like in India, like no one ever thought they were racist.
Right.
You would never hear about racist Indians.
Right.
Maybe Russell Peters would joke around about it. Right?
Well,
you know Russell, the comedian?
Yeah. Now you hear about it, and what they're doing is that what happened was they explained to the ladies, or not the lady, there's like the whole group. It was done in a room, in front of a bunch of people, and they explained brown people in general, like it's some kind of block of brownness or whatever. Brown people have anti-black racism too, and that upholds white supremacy.
Oh my God.
And then they start just doing this, and it's almost like cold reading, right?
Yeah.
Like that Edwards guy, whatever that guy's name was, had that
Yes.
show. And so it's like they cold read and they wait for somebody to start looking like they're getting the sweat or something happening. And then they say, now what we need to do, now that we've introduced this idea of your brown fragility, is we need to, your anti-blackness, is we need to interrogate the feelings that came up. And so they go one by one through the room and made every single one of them confess their feelings. Like, who's not going to participate? And here's that double bind, because it gets to you, right? And so what do you say? You say, well, I don't really know what you're talking about. Well,
And
they're
then
going to say you're ignoring it.
Racist. Yeah, you're
exactly.
ignoring it.
And then if you confess to it, then you're falling in. So this is straight up cult indoctrination stuff.
It really is like those people in Game of Thrones. You remember those people that almost like took over the crown,
Yeah.
and kidnapped Cersei. It is.
Yeah.
It's like that sort of pattern, for whatever reason, just seems to reoccur with humans.
And I think it comes down to our natural religious impulses.
Yeah.
That I think, you know pretty well from my background, I don't believe in God. I'm an atheist.
How dare you?
Oh, well, we get along. And so it's like, I still do think that we have certain impulses underneath that lead people to build religious structures around themselves and have religious, thoughts and feelings and want to have spiritual development and all of this. And so religions can kind of do one of two things. I used to be kind of hard ass about religion and like tough, angry atheist kind of picture, but I've thought about it more, and which you're not allowed to think about things and change your mind now, but I did. And what I realized is that some religions look up. They're like looking at God and they're afraid of sin, but they're paying attention to God. They're thinking about renewal. They're thinking about redemption. They're thinking about forgiveness. And then some religions look down, and all they do is look at the sin, and they focus on the sin, and that's where the witch hunts came from. That was when the Calvinists got fire and brimstone, Jonathan Edwards screaming, sinners in the hands of an angry God. You're hanging on a spider's thread above the fires of hell, and God should knock you into it because everybody's full of sin. Next thing you know, they're killing witches. So it's like you start focus. If you look up, then religion can be great. It can actually lead people, if they spiritual development, community, so on. But if you're looking down, you're going to start obsessing about everybody. If you're obsessing about sin, you're going to start obsessing about everybody else's sin too.
Yes.
Because you're going to want to there's this feeling with, again, reading Robin DiAngelo's White Fragility, there's this feeling that she doesn't want to feel alone. Like she has these struggles and she doesn't want to be alone.
So she's a white lady?
Oh, yeah. Robin DiAngelo's a white lady who goes in and for like $12,000 a pop does these corporate seminars.
What?
And, yeah, 12 grand for 2 hours and teaches. She goes in and tells white people that they're racist and then interrogates their feelings when they get defensive about it.
Oh, my goodness.
It's like the biggest corporate training hustle ever.